Men have done brave deeds, and bards have sung them well. I of good George Nadiver now the tale will tell. In Californian mountains, a hunter bold was he, keen his eye and sure his aim as any you should see. A little Indian boy followed him everywhere, eager to share the hunter's joy, the hunter's meal to share. And when the bird or deer fell by the hunter's skill, the boy was always near to help with right good will. One day, as through the cleft between two mountains steep, shut in both right and left, their questing way they keep. They see two grizzly bears with hunger fierce and fell, rush at them unawares right down the narrow dell. The boy turned round with screams and ran with terror wild. One of the pair of savage beasts pursued the shrieking child. The hunter raised his gun. He knew one charge was all, and through the boy's pursuing foe he sent his only ball. The other on George Nadiver came on with dreadful pace. The hunter stood unarmed and met him face to face. I say unarmed he stood against those frightful paws. The rifle butt or club of wood could stand no more than straws. George Nadiver stood still and looked him in the face. The wild beast stopped amazed, then came with slackening pace. Still firm the hunter stood, although his heart beat high. Again the creature stopped and gazed with wondering eye. The hunter met his gaze, nor yet an inch gave way. The bear turned slowly round and slowly moved away. What thoughts were in his mind, it would be hard to spell. What thoughts were in George Nadiver, I rather guess than tell. But sure that's rifle's aim, swift choice of generous part, showed in its passing gleam the depths of a brave heart. That is a poem titled George Nadiver. I'm not sure who it's by, but it was how Ralph Waldo Emerson ended his essay on courage that I'm going to go over today. And it's a pretty good poem, I think. I think it tells a cool story and it has a good message. This is a short essay, only like 14 pages, that Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, titled Courage. And it's actually about the three qualities that he believes attract wonder and respect across mankind. And so this is going to be a brief one because it's only a short thing. It's only a short essay, so it's going to be a brief episode, but I think it's a powerful essay, and I think it'd be worth you knowing about and me articulating more and more so I can actually understand and internalize the lessons. So he starts it out and ends it with a poem. The one he starts with is, so nigh is grandeur to our dust, so near is God to man. When duty whispers low, thou must, the youth replies, I can. Peril around, all else appalling, cannon in front and leaden rain. Him, duty, through the clarion calling, to the van called not in vain. So that's how he starts it. Ralph Waldo Emerson then begins to explain the three qualities that he believes attract wonder. I observe that there are three qualities which conspicuously attract the wonder and reverence of mankind. Number one, disinterestedness, as shown in indifference to the ordinary bribes and influences of conduct. A purpose so sincere and generous that it cannot be tempted aside by any prospects of wealth or other private advantage. Self-love is, in almost all men, such an overweight that they are incredulous of a man's habitual preference to the general of the general good to his own. But when they see it proved by sacrifices of ease, wealth, rank, and the life of life itself, there is no limit to their admiration. This has made the power of the saints of the East and West, who have led the religion of great nations. Self-sacrifice is the real miracle out of which all the reported miracles grew. Powerful. So you think about Jesus, Gandhi, Buddha. You think about veterans that sacrifice their life and that go overseas and fight our battles. Those men are admired and respected and revered by all of mankind because of this right here. They're disinterested in the commonly sought after things, the things that most men seek after. Those men that do not or are genuinely disinterested in those things, they attract respect and reverence from other men. And that's true. Number two, practical power. Men admire the man who can organize their wishes and thoughts in stone and wood and steel and brass. The man who can build the boat, who has the impiety to make the rivers run the way he wants them, who can lead his telegraph through the ocean from shore to shore, who, sitting in his closet, can lay out the plans of a campaign, sea war, and land war, such that the best generals and admirals, when all is done, see that they must thank him for success. The power of better combination and foresight, however exhibited, whether it only plays a game of chess, or whether more loftily a cunning mathematician, penetrating the cubic weights of stars, predicts the planet which eyes had never seen. So practical power, the ability to build things, the ability to mold your actual physical environment to the vision that you have in your head. Think of a carpenter, a master carpenter, think of a master craftsman, a master painter, a musician, people that can bring the visions in their mind to reality. Practical power is what Emerson would call it. That is the second trait or characteristic that attracts admiration and reverence from mankind. The third, and that's about a page of the essay, page and a half. The third is courage. And he spends the rest of the essay talking about courage. So what I'm going to do is basically just go through this in sequential order and just kind of read the highlights and read the parts that I deem necessary for you to get the gist of the actual essay. The third excellence is courage, the perfect will, which no terrors can shake, which is attracted by frowns or threats or hostile enemies, nay, needs these to awake and fan its reserved energies into a pure flame. There is Hercules, an Achilles, a Rustum, an Arthur, or a Cid in the mythology of every nation, and in authentic history a Leonidas, a Scipio, a Caesar, a Richard Coeur de Lion, a Cromwell, a Nelson, a Great Condé, a Bertrand du Guesclin, a Doge Dandolo, a Napoleon, a Massena, a Ney. It is said courage is common, but the immense esteem in which it is held proves it to be rare. Animal resistance, the instinct of the male animal, when cornered, is no doubt common, but the pure article, courage with eyes, courage with conduct, self-possession at the cannon's mouth, cheerfulness and lonely adherence to the right, is the endowment of elevated characters. That was really good writing. Is the endowment. Courage is the endowment of elevated characters. That's really good writing, and it's also an interesting point about there's a Hercules and an Achilles, a Rustum, all these characters in the mythology of every nation, and there's actually men that have existed in every great nation as well that carry those same characteristics, namely courage. I believe C.S. Lewis says something like, courage is the testing point at which all other virtues are tested, or something like that. But basically, he's saying that courage is the truest virtue, because all other virtues at a certain point will be tested, and the only way that those virtues hold up is through courage. So, interesting, to say the least. He goes on to say, we have had examples of men who, for sure, Emerson is proving how important it is to society through different examples and how much it actually holds weight in our minds and our psyches, collectively and individually. We have had examples of men who, for showing effective courage on a single occasion, have become a favorite spectacle to nations and must be brought in chariots to every mass meeting. So, men who have exhibited, like a Medal of Honor guy, for recipient, for example, in World War II, acts extraordinarily courageously in one specific instance and then gets paraded around the country, as he rightfully should. But from that one instance of immense courage, it's definitely it's an interesting thing to contemplate, how much we maybe subconsciously revere those who act courageously. And so this is an interesting thing. He goes on to talk about sea turtles, how if you kill a sea turtle, I'll just read it. Touch the snapping turtle with a stick and he seizes it with his teeth. Cut off his head and the teeth will not let go of the stick. Break the egg of the young, and the little embryo, before yet the eyes are open, bites fiercely. These vivacious creatures contriving, shall we say, not only to bite after they are dead, but also to bite before they're born. So that's an example of another creature. They are born and die with that instinct to bite fiercely. But then he goes on to say that, but man begins life helpless. The babe is in paroxysms of fear the moment its nurse leaves it alone, and it comes so slowly to any power of self-protection that mothers say the salvation of the life and health of a young child is a perpetual miracle. The terrors of a child are quite reasonable and add to his loveliness, for his utter ignorance and weakness and his enchanting indignation on such a small basis of capital compel every bystander to take his part. Every moment as long as he is awake, he studies the use of his eyes, ears, hands, and feet, learning how to meet and avoid his dangers, and thus every hour loses one terror more. But this education stops too soon. This is very important. But this education stops too soon. A large majority of men being bred in families and beginning early to be occupied day by day with some routine of safe industry never come to the rough experiences that make the Indian, the soldier, or the frontiersman self-subsistent or fearless. Hence, the high price of courage indicates the general timidity. So basically he's saying we're born with this helplessness that we have to learn how to overcome, and the way we do that is through courage. And a baby has immense amount of courage shown because everything is unknown, everything is uncertain. So he has to show courage one little thing at a time to get over these terrors. What he's saying is that education stops too soon. We get into this safe, sterile environment and routine where there is no unknown, and we actually actively seek or actively veer our life and direct our life away from the unknown, so that we don't have this education of fearlessness or self-subsistence or courage. We don't get the chance to exercise courage as we grow older unless we do it intentionally. He goes on to describe cowardice. Cowardice shuts the eye till the sky is not larger than a calfskin, shuts the eyes so that we cannot see the horse that is running away from us. Worse, shuts the eyes of the mind and chills the heart. Fear is cruel and mean. The political reigns of terror have been reigns of madness and malignity, a total perversion of opinion. Society is upside down, and its best men are thought too bad to live. Think about where we're in right now. There's a war on masculinity, on real masculinity in the West particularly, and that's exactly what he's saying. And he wrote this in like the 1860s or 50s, or 70s maybe, sometime in the mid-1800s. And he's saying that the political reigns of terror have been reigns of madness and malignity, the total perversion of opinion. Society is upside down, and its best men are thought too bad to be alive. So think about that in terms of the perception that society has of masculinity now. It's being attacked from every angle. So we must preserve and cultivate it in ourselves for sure. He goes on to say, what cannot stand must fall, and the measure of our sincerity and therefore of the respect of men is the amount of health and wealth we will hazard in the defense of our right. So the sincerity that we show as men, as human beings, is an indication of the respect that we will garner from other men. Sincerity breeds respect, and that's just how it is. So he's saying, what cannot stand must fall. So if you cannot defend your right using whatever resources or courage that you have, then it will fall. And so the amount of resources, in this context that he says health and wealth, that you're willing to hazard or put up in front of danger to defend your right or your principle or whatever it is that you're defending, that's an indication of your courage. This is, he goes on to talk about passivity. But with this pacific education, we have no readiness for bad times. I am much mistaken if every man who went to the army in the late war had not a lively curiosity to know how he should behave in action. Tender, amiable boys who had never encountered any rougher play than a baseball match or a fishing excursion were suddenly drawn up to face a bayonet charge or capture a battery. Of course they must each go into that action with a certain despair. Each whispers to himself, "My exertions must be of small account to the result. Only will the benignant heavens save me from disgracing myself and my friends and my state. Die, oh yes, I can well die, but I cannot afford to misbehave." He's talking about these young boys who have never experienced more fear than a baseball match or rougher play than a baseball match. They have to go into war and face a bayonet charge, and in their mind they're thinking, I can die because that would at least be courageous, but I cannot afford to misbehave. I cannot afford to not do my duty or act without courage or to act cowardly. I can literally die. I'm totally fine and I can die well, but I cannot afford to misbehave, for it will disgrace my friends, my family, and my state and myself. That's fascinating. There's also, I read a book called With the Old Breed about a guy named Eugene Sledge, who was a Marine in the Pacific Theater of World War II for the Americans. And he talks about when he was going into action, like the question, like, how will I perform? Because you think, and he goes on to say, like, the loudest person, the person who says I will perform the best, or I can't wait till the enemy comes in front of me and I'm going to mow him down, blah, 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 I'm going to act so courageously, that is the man that will cower. because no man knows. You can't know for sure how you will act in such a terrific or harrowing scenario such as battle or war. Like it's the man who enters into it humbly but confidently that will perform his duty. He goes on to say, I knew a young soldier who died in the early campaign who confided to his sister that he had made up his mind to volunteer for the war. I have not, he said, any proper courage, but I shall never let anyone find out. Isn't that interesting? I have not any proper courage, but I shall never let anyone find out. It's good. That's good. So he goes on to describe fear now, and this is a really interesting part. I found this to be actually relatively paradigm shifting. Knowledge is the antidote to fear. Knowledge, use, and reason, with its higher aids. The child is as much in danger from a staircase or the first grate or a bathtub or a cat as the soldier from a cannon or an ambush. Each surmounts the fear as fast as he precisely understands the peril and learns the means of resistance. Each is liable to panic, which is exactly, he's describing what panic is here, exactly, the terror of ignorance surrendered to the imagination. Knowledge is the encourager, knowledge that takes fear out of the heart. Knowledge and use, which is knowledge in practice. They can conquer who believe they can. They can conquer who believe they can. So it's those who win are those who believe they can win. There's this pervading message that I've gotten through reading and the Founders Podcast and other things. Belief comes before ability. It is only those who believe they can achieve something that end up achieving it, because belief is the prerequisite to action, and you cannot achieve anything without action. They can conquer who believe they can. It is he who has done the deed once who does not shrink from attempting it again. It is the groom who knows the jumping horse well who can safely ride him. It is the veteran soldier who, seeing the flash of the cannon, can step aside from the path of the ball. Use makes a better soldier than the most urgent considerations of duty. Familiarity with danger enabling him to estimate the danger. He sees how much is the risk and is not afflicted with imagination. Knows practically Marshal Sack's rule that every soldier killed cost the enemy his weight in lead. So he's basically saying knowledge is how you combat fear. Using your knowledge in practice, using what you know, is how you combat fear. I like his description of panic as well. Panic is the terror of ignorance surrendered to the imagination. So when you think about a terrifying or a panic-inducing situation, that's literally just your imagination being able to control what you don't know. So it's using the terror of ignorance at the whim of imagination, as opposed to trying to seek out what is the knowledge that I can gain from this. How can I use that knowledge to then have more known, so then I'll have less fear and I can act more courageously. Courage consists in the conviction that the agents with whom you contend are not superior in strength of the resources or spirit to you. So basically, courage is the belief that the thing that I am up against is not more powerful than me and the spirit that I hold and that God gives me. The eye is easily daunted, and the drums, flags, shining helmets, beard, and mustache of the soldier have conquered you long before his sword or bayonet reaches you. So basically, he's saying knowledge, yes, for the danger of dangers of illusion. The danger of dangers is illusion. So we elude ourselves sometimes with, he's saying the battle is lost. Like when Mike Tyson would beat people, that he said he would beat people before they even got in the ring, because he had this fierce and almost indomitable perception in the public eye. People basically beat themselves before they even got to him. Oh, this is good. Courage gives the cutting edge to every profession. The judge puts his mind to the tangle of contradictions in the case. Squarely accosts the question, and by not being afraid of it, by dealing with it as business which should be disposed of, he sees presently that common arithmetic and common methods apply to this affair. Perseverance strips it of all peculiarity and ranges it on the same ground as other business. Morphy played a daring game in chess. Listen to this. Morphy played a daring game in chess. The daring was only an illusion of the spectator, for the player sees his move to be well fortified and safe. Only the person making the move can understand the move. It's only viewed as daring to the person who does not understand the move. There's this line in a song that I like by an artist named Mike. He says something to the effect of, "It's my vision, how could you see? It's my move. It might seem daring or risky to you, but it's not your move." It's an interesting insight into the illusion of the spectator and what seems daring versus what actually is. He talks about now the importance of character or courage. Captain John Brown, the hero of Kansas, said to me in conversation that for a settler in a new country, one good, believing, strong-minded man is worth 100, nay, 1,000 men without character, and that the right men will give a permanent direction to the fortunes of a state. 1,000 men without character is worth one strong-minded man that is good and believing. It is still observed those men most valiant are who are most modest ere they came to war, which I believe means before. So it's basically saying the men that are the most valiant, who are acting the most courageously, are the ones who are the most modest coming into it, because they didn't have some arrogant projection that they had to project onto people that they were some brave. They actually had no idea, but they were just going to do their duty and find out. True courage is not ostentatious. Bam, that's the same lesson. Here's another thing. So he talks about the contagion of courage. See, too, what good contagion belongs to it. Everywhere it finds its own with magnetic affinity. Courage of the soldier awakes the courage of women. Florence Nightingale brings Lent and blessings of her shadow. Heroic women offer themselves as nurses of the brave veteran. It's awesome. Poetry and eloquence catch the hint and soar to a pitch unknown before. Everything feels the new breath except the old doting nigh dead politicians whose heart the trumpet of resurrection could not awake. So courage is contagious. He talks about how women will become heroic when they see a heroic man dying in battle, and they'll come serve them on the front or on the battlefield. Poetry and eloquence catch the hint, and they soar to a pitch unknown. So you see art and business spike as well, especially preceding times of war, especially if you're victorious. The only people who do not feel the new breath are those dead politicians who the trumpet of resurrection could not awake. So here's another thing. He talks about Napoleon, who said, "My hand is immediately connected with my head." Emerson then goes on to say, "But the sacred courage is connected with the heart. The head is a half, a fraction, until it is enlarged and inspired by the moral sentiment. For it is not the means on which we draw, as health or wealth, practical skill or dexterous talent, or multitudes of followers that count, but the aims only." I'm going to read that again. "For it is not the means on which we draw, as health or wealth, practical skill or talent, or multitudes of followers that count, but the aims only." The aim reacts back on the means. A great aim aggrandizes the means. So he's basically saying, what are you putting first? What are you serving as your God? Is it money? Is it fame? Is it a certain amount of followers in today's day and age? Is it a certain amount of women, or is it a certain type of women? What are you putting at the front? What are you aiming at? Because what you're aiming at will then aggrandize the means. The means will not aggrandize the aim. The aim reacts back on the means. So if you're aiming at something, Jordan Peterson says this, if you aim at the highest version of yourself, or the highest thing, then your life will unfold in a beautiful manner no matter what. If you aim at money and you make money your God, your life will certainly not unfold in a very virtuous way, to say the least. Let's talk about calling now. There is a persuasion in the soul of man that he is here for cause, that he was put down in this place by the Creator to do the work for which he inspires him, that thus he is an overmatch for all antagonists that could combine against him. So basically, when he's saying that there's persuasion in the heart of the visionary, of the person that believes God put him down here to do the work that inspires him, and that thus he is an overmatch, as Emerson said. He is an overmatch, or he is capable of defeating any antagonist that could combine against him. There's this verse that says, "For who can stand against him who has God on his side?" Nothing, really. This is God's hat. Sacred courage indicates that a man loves an idea better than all things in the world, that he is aiming neither at pelf nor comfort, but will venture all to put in act the invisible thought in his mind. He is everywhere a liberator, but of a freedom that is ideal, not seeking to have land or money or conveniences, but to have no further limitation than that which his own constitution imposes. He is free to speak the truth. He is not free to lie. So that's a powerful reminder. Sacred courage indicates a man loves an idea better than all things in the world. Oh, this is a great lesson. He goes on to talk about fear again. He has not learned the lesson of life who does not every day surmount a fear. I do not wish to put myself or any man into a theatrical position, or to urge him to ape the courage of his comrade. Have the courage not to adopt another's courage. He's saying that what's courageous to you is not courageous for me, and I should not measure my courage or my virtue or my I guess, yeah, you could just say courage. Not to measure my courage against yours, because we're in different experiences, and what's courageous to you, he goes on to, actually earlier in the essay, he says that some men have courage to stand up and speak an articulate speech. Some men have the courage to fire bullets and get hit by bullets and act courageously in war, but would cower at the opportunity to speak. So it's different courage. Different courage is required for different men in different arenas. And he's basically saying, A, he has not learned the lesson of life who does not every day surmount a fear, and he does not advise that you ape the courage of his comrades, or of your comrades, and that you should have the courage not to adopt another's courage, that your courage is your own, and you should cultivate it as such. Yeah, so then he goes on to that essay, or that poem that I started with, George the Diver. It's a great poem, but it's a great essay too. It's really quick. I didn't barely touch on a fraction of it. I definitely think you should read this. You can download it on, what I did is just download it as a PDF and print it out. It's anywhere online. Just look up Courage by Ralph Waldo Emerson and it'll come up. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought once again, disinterestedness is the first quality which conspicuously attracts wonder and reverence. The second is practical power, and the third is courage. And the thing that this brings to my mind is, like, how can I act courageously? I think the biggest lesson is that idea of he has not learned the lesson of life who does not surmount a fear every day. So what's a fear that you and I can tackle today? I don't know, maybe it's something that we're putting off, maybe it's a conversation, maybe it's a job or a project, or maybe it's quitting a job or a project, or I don't know. Whatever it is, sussing out what that is and then acting courageously and confronting it. Hope y'all enjoyed this. Hope it was useful. Hope y'all have a good one.